The alarm lights flashed red inside Outpost 7, a small human alien research base on the edge of the desert moon. Everyone inside stopped what they were doing. Engineers froze. Guards looked at each other. Even the air felt tight and heavy. But no one felt the shock as deeply as Saren Vora, a young alien woman belonging to a species that feared one thing more than death, the parasite resin. Saren stumbled into the hallway, breathing fast, holding her left arm tight against her chest. Her hand and forearm were covered in a thick dark blue substance that looked like melted glass and moving slime at the same time. It crawled slowly across her skin like it was alive. People stepped back instantly. Everyone knew the rule of her. Species: if the resin catches you, cut the limb or die within minutes. Saren's face was pale. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "It touched me. It touched my arm." She already knew what would happen next. Her people would never risk their lives to save someone touched by resin. They believed the infected. Limb must be removed immediately. No hesitation, no mercy, no discussion. She expected the humans to do the same. But that was before she met Daniel Hayes. He was the only one who ran toward her when he saw her collapsing by the wall. Daniel was a medic, but more importantly, he was human. And humans had a strange habit of fighting problems, long after other species had given up. "Saren, sit down right here," Daniel ordered, lowering her gently to the floor. Saren shook. Her head, panic filling her chest. "Daniel, you must amputate it. Now, that is the rule. That is how we survive." Daniel looked at her arm, then looked straight into her terrified eyes. "No," he said. "We are not cutting anything." Saren stared at him like he had lost his mind. "You don't understand," she said. "The resin kills the limb in 10 minutes. After that, it spreads. My people amputate to stop the infection. And humans." Daniel answered, "Don't give up unless the last option is gone." He opened his medical kit so fast the metal tools rattled against each other. His gloves glowed as he activated the microscopic scanners. Saren felt her heart racing. "Why are you doing this? Why risk yourself? You should leave me to die." Daniel didn't even look up. "That's not what we do." The resin pulsed across her skin, inches from reaching her elbow. A strange, sizzling sound echoed in the hallway. People watching from a distance whispered, "He's going to die. He should cut her arm." No one survives resin contact. But Daniel ignored them all. He touched the edge of the resin carefully with a scanning probe. The substance reacted instantly. It jumped. A small piece shot forward and hit Daniel's glove, melting a hole into within seconds. Gasps filled the hallway. Saren's voice broke. "Daniel, stop. It will kill you too." Daniel shook his head, pulling off the damaged glove and throwing it aside. "It's reacting to body heat," he said quickly. "And it's alive, moving with purpose." His calm voice made Saren even more confused. He wasn't scared. He wasn't shaking. He wasn't stepping back like her own people always did. He was fighting. Danielle lifted her arm slightly, ignoring the burns on his hand. "We have to slow it down. If we bring the temperature down 2 degrees, the resin might stop spreading." Saren's breathing became sharp and uneven. "Why are you helping me? I'm not your species. I'm not your responsibility." Daniel finally looked at her. "You're a person. That's enough." Her eyes widened. No one had ever said that to her. Her world had always been rules, survival, sacrifice. She never imagined someone would choose to save her life simply because they wanted to. He grabbed a small frost injector from his kit and pressed it near the resin. A cold burst of air sprayed through the area, making Saren gasp. Steam floated around her arm as the resin hissed angrily. For a moment, the spreading slowed. Only a moment. Then the resin suddenly turned darker, almost black, and began crawling faster, trying to reach her shoulder. "It's evolving," Daniel murmured. This thing adapts to everything. Saren's eyes filled with tears. I told you, cutting is the only way. Not today, Daniel said firmly. We're going to beat this. He took another tool, a vibration scanner, and placed it under her arm. The machine vibrated softly, sending waves through the resin. It reacted violently, shaking and bubbling like boiling liquid. The sound echoed through the hallway, like a living creature screaming. Everyone stepped back. Except Daniel. Hold on, Saren. Stay awake, he said. I need you with me. But Saren could feel the cold numbness spreading through her fingers. Her vision blurred. The room looked like it was spinning. The resin wasn't just crawling. It was feeding. The lights flickered. A heavy alarm began ringing deeper inside the base, signaling a biohazard breach. But Daniel kept working, sweat dripping from his forehead. He whispered under his breath, "Come on, come on." Saren looked at him, her eyes full of fear but also something new. Something she had never felt for a human. Trust. She tried to speak, but only one sentence came out. Daniel, please don't die because of me. Daniel gave her a small, determined smile. I won't, and neither will you. At that exact moment, the resin made a sudden violent movement and shot upward, aiming directly for Daniel's bare wrist. Everything froze. Everyone watching gasped. Saren screamed his name, and the resin struck. Everyone watched the dark blue resin strike Daniel's bare wrist. The living substance crawled across his skin like liquid fire, burning through the top layer almost instantly. The smell of melting fabric, burned skin, and chemical fumes filled the air. But Daniel Hayes did not step back. He did not shout. Did not even flinch. He only tightened his grip around Saren's injured arm. Focus on me, he told her calmly. Don't look at it. Don't panic. Saren stared at him in shock. She expected him to scream or fall or run for his life. Anyone from her species would have escaped the second resin touched them. That was their rule. That was their survival instinct. But Daniel stayed exactly where he was. Daniel! An alien guard shouted from behind. Let go. Cut her arm and run. The resin will kill you both. Daniel ignored them. His voice was soft but firm, like a mountain that refused to move. No one is cutting anything. Saren's eyes widened. Why are you not afraid? You should leave me. Save yourself. Daniel's lips pressed into a determined line. That's not how humans work. The resin on his wrist glowed darker, almost black now. It vibrated like a heartbeat, alive and angry. Daniel lifted his arm to inspect it for only a second, then went back to treating Saren. Saren couldn't understand it. Her people had trained for generations to fear this substance. They saw it as doom, as a death sentence. But Daniel, he looked at it like a problem he needed to solve, like something he could beat. He pulled out a different tool, a thin metal rod with microlights along its length. What is that? Saren whispered. Temperature stabilizer, Daniel said. If I can lower the resin's feeding speed, we'll get a few more minutes. Saren shook her head. You do not have minutes. Humans do not survive resin contact. Then I'll be the first, Daniel replied simply. Saren stared at him like he was insane. But something inside her chest shifted, something unfamiliar. Respect? Hope? Fear for him? She didn't know. She only knew one thing. He should not be fighting this hard. Daniel pressed the stabilizer near her arm. Cold mist spread again, but the resin reacted differently this time. It curled back like it was confused, then suddenly lashed outward. In another strike, this time toward Daniel's face. Daniel jerked back just in time. The resin missed by inches and hit the floor instead, burning a hole straight through the metal tiles. Everyone gasped. Even Daniel froze for a second. Okay, he muttered. That's new. Saren's breathing grew faster. It adapts to threats. It learns. It hunts. Daniel nodded slowly. So do humans. He put the stabilizer tool aside and reached for something else. a handheld scanner shaped like a pistol. Saren panicked. "What are you doing now?" "Resin responds to sound frequencies," Daniel said. "If I can confuse it, maybe it will release your arm instead of climbing higher," Saren blinked. "My people never tried that." Daniel raised the scanner. "Well, your people amputate too fast." Before Saren could protest, Daniel activated the device. A deep vibration filled the hallway. The resin on Saren's arm trembled, expanding and contracting like it was breathing too fast. Then it made a horrible screeching noise, a sound halfway between metal grinding and an animal crying. The watching crowd stepped even farther back. Saren gripped Daniel's wrist. "Stop! It is hurting you too." Daniel shook his head. "Pain means it's working." But as the noise grew sharper, the resin on Daniel's wrist reacted too. It suddenly detached from his skin and shot upward along his arm like a snake climbing a branch. Daniel hissed in pain, but he didn't stop the device. Saren felt her heart slam against her ribs. "It will reach your shoulder. Daniel, stop. Please, it will kill you." Daniel's response made her speechless. "If I back out now," he whispered, "you die first." Saren's eyes filled with tears she didn't expect. She was used to being told she was replaceable. She was used to being left behind. She was used to being told to accept death, but here was a human risking everything for her. Suddenly, a group of alien soldiers ran into the hall, shouting, "Medic! Move away! We'll amputate her arm now. That is the only way." Daniel turned toward them, eyes sharp. "You touch her arm," he said, "and I'll fight you myself." Everyone froze. They had never heard a human threaten soldiers like that. They had never seen a human stand between death and someone not his own species. The soldiers hesitated. Saren whispered, "Daniel, why do this for me? Why risk your life for a stranger?" Daniel didn't look at her this time. He kept his eyes on the resin spreading across his own arm, but his voice was steady and filled with something deeper than bravery. "You're not a stranger," he said. "You're someone who needs help and humans. Don't run from that." Just then, the resin on Saren's arm began to change shape again. It thickened, darkened, started forming small, moving tendrils. Daniel's eyes widened. "This thing is evolving faster than I expected," he whispered. "And we're running out of time." The hallway trembled as Daniel stared at the resin forming dark tendrils around Saren's arm. The substance was no longer just spreading, it was thinking. It looked like it was searching for weaknesses, studying both of them. Saren felt cold fear in her chest. Her species believed resin was a mindless parasite, but this one, acted like a predator, and Daniel was treating it like a challenge he refused to lose. "Saren," he said quietly, "I need you to stay with me." "Don't pass out," Saren tried. She truly tried. But the numbness in her fingers was growing. Her vision blurred every few seconds. Her heartbeat felt like it was slowing down. She whispered, I can't feel my hand anymore." Daniel looked at her with concern, but not with pity. "Never pity. That means the resin is trying to shut down your nerves. I need to work faster." He grabbed a new tool from his medical kit, something she hadn't seen before. It was small, flat, and had a row of glowing circles on the front. Saren swallowed nervously. "What is that?" "Pulse disruptor," Daniel said. "If it works, it will confuse the resin long enough to stop it from climbing." Saren's eyes widened. "Humans made this?" Daniel nodded. "Humans make a lot of things, especially when they're scared." Saren stared at him, confused. "But you don't look scared." Daniel smiled softly. "Humans don't stop just because they're scared." He placed the device against her arm. A shockwave burst through her body. Saren cried out, not from pain, but from how strange the sensation was. It felt like a cold wind rushing under her skin, pushing against the resin. The resin convulsed violently. Its tendrils melted back into a thick mass. It screeched an awful metallic sound like it hated being touched by human technology. Good, Daniel murmured. If it's reacting, we still have time. But then something unexpected happened. The resin on Daniel's arm reacted too. It grew brighter, faster, more alive. It crawled up to his elbow, burning everything in its path. Daniel winced. His breath hitched. Sweat rolled down his forehead. But he didn't pull away. Saren felt a sharp pain in her chest, not from the resin, but from fear. Fear for him. Daniel, stop. You cannot save me if you die. Please let go. Daniel's answer was quiet, almost gentle. I told you, I'm not letting you die today. Saren had no words. No one in her entire life had ever said something like that to her. Her people valued strength, not compassion. If someone fell behind, they were left. If someone was infected, they were sacrificed. Yet this human someone, who barely knew her, was fighting harder for her life than her own species ever had. Saren whispered, "Why are you doing this?" "I don't understand humans." Daniel didn't look at her. He focused on the resin, on the tools, on saving her arm. "You don't need to understand humans," he said. "You just need to stay alive." Those words stayed in her mind like a heartbeat. Stay alive. Someone actually wanted her to stay alive. The thought warmed her chest in a way she had never felt before. Something inside her, something buried deep, began to shift. She had grown up hearing that humans were reckless, dangerous, emotional creatures. But now she saw something else. Humans were fierce protectors. They didn't give up on people. Not even strangers. A sudden tremor ran through the floor. Lights flickered again. The base I spoke through the speakers. "Warning. Biological hazard escalating. Evacuate the medical sector immediately." Soldiers tried again to intervene. Human. "Medic, step away from the infected one. We will amputate before the resin spreads to the chest." Daniel didn't even bother looking at them this time. "Anyone touches her," he said coldly, "they deal with me." The soldiers froze. Saren stared at him in disbelief. He was injured. He was exhausted. He was fighting something deadly, and yet he was still standing there, refusing to let anyone harm her. Was this bravery, or madness, or something humans carried naturally in their hearts? Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden burning sensation. The resin on her arm began to pulse in sync with the resin on Daniel's arm, slowly, strongly, like two hearts beating together. Daniel's eyes widened. "It's forming a link between us." Saren panicked. "What does that mean?" "It means," Daniel said, swallowing hard, "that if it kills you, it might kill me too." Saren's breath caught. Suddenly the situation wasn't about her anymore. Daniel was in danger. Because of her. A sharp emotion struck her chest. Guilt, fear, and something softer mixed together. She whispered, "I don't want you to die. You should live. I don't matter." Daniel finally turned to look at her. His eyes were steady and strong. "You do matter," he said. "You matter enough that I'm not walking away." Saren stared at him, speechless. Something warm spilled into her chest. Something new, something she wasn't supposed to feel for a human. Before she could speak, the resin suddenly expanded across both their arms. Glowing like fire, Daniel's eyes widened. "It's evolving again," he whispered, "and it's preparing for something big." The base shook again, this time harder. Dust fell from the ceiling. Lights dimmed, flickered, then struggled to stay alive. The emergency alarms kept repeating the same warning. Biological hazard spreading. Sector lockdown in progress. Saren's heart hammered with fear. The resin on her arm and Daniel's arm glowed brighter, like two rivers of living fire trying to merge into a single stream. Daniel pressed his hand against the ground to stay steady as another tremor rolled through the hallway. Saren whispered, "Daniel, the base is reacting to the resin. It thinks the infection is out of control." Daniel nodded slowly, "Because it is." The resin tendrils around Saren's arm began to twist upward, reaching toward her shoulder. It moved like a creature searching for the fastest path to her heart. But then something worse happened. A deep crack snapped through the wall behind them. The energy field reactors embedded in the structure, usually stable and glowing blue, began to flicker violently. The resin inside the hallway must have disturbed the energy grid. Daniel's eyes widened. If that reactor fails, the entire room will seal. We'll have 5 minutes before oxygen drains out. Saren froze. But we are still inside. Exactly why we need to move fast. He tried to push himself to stand, but the resin on his own arm jerked his muscles. His knees buckled. He fell back down with a hard gasp. Saren caught his shoulder with her free hand, steadying him as best she could. "You're getting weaker," she whispered. Daniel forced a small breath. "So are you." For the first time since this emergency began, Saren saw something rare, a flicker of pain in Daniel's eyes. A small sign that his body was reaching its limits. But even then, his grip on her arm tightened. He didn't let go, not even for a second. Saren felt guilt twist inside her chest. She whispered, "Daniel, my people would have cut my arm. They would never do what you are doing." Daniel gave a tired smile. "Good thing I'm not your people." Suddenly, a loud metallic thud echoed from the far end of the hallway. A mechanical panel slammed shut, sealing the area. Another panel followed. Then another. The base was trying to trap the infection. Soldiers and scientists ran toward the exits, shouting, "Sector lockdown starting. Run before the doors close. Leave them. The resin is too dangerous." Saren watched as her own species, her own people fled, without a single glance back. But the humans stayed. Daniel's voice was soft but sharp with determination. "I'm not leaving you, Saren. Not now, not ever." Saren felt something break inside her. Not in a painful way, in a powerful way. Like a wall she had built her whole life had finally cracked open. She whispered, "Why? Why do humans fight? For others like this?" Daniel rested his burned arm against his knee, breathing hard. "Because if we don't, who will?" The walls vibrated again. Panels slid shut. Heavy metal locks engaged. The hallway grew darker. And then, the resin changed again. It began crawling off Saren's arm and spilling onto the floor, forming a move-in pool of dark blue slime. It spread in a circle around them like a trap. Tendrils climbed up the walls, reaching toward the flickering energy grids. Daniel frowned. "It's learning from the environment. It's adapting to energy signatures." Saren's breath caught. "What does that mean?" "It means," Daniel said slowly, "it's trying to grow stronger." The resin suddenly shot upward like a whip and latched onto one of the energy conduits in the wall. A burst of sparks exploded into the air. The resin absorbed the electricity like it was drinking water. Saren's eyes widened in horror. "It's feeding." Daniel clenched his jaw. "This is bad, very, very bad." Another tendril reached toward a second conduit. Daniel grabbed the broken remains of a metal panel from the floor and slammed it against the wall to block the resin's path. The metal sizzled as the resin burned through it. Daniel threw the panel aside and yelled, "Piece of..." "Okay, new plan." Saren recognized the look in his eyes, the reckless, wild look humans got when things were at their worst. Her voice trembled. "Daniel, what plan?" Daniel grabbed the pulse disruptor again, even though his hands were shaking. "We confuse it," he said. "We overload its senses. If it's feeding on energy, then we hit it with too many signals at once." Saren blinked. "That sounds impossible." Daniel grinned weakly. "Welcome to working with humans." Before Saren could respond, the resin suddenly lunged toward Daniel's chest. Saren's scream echoed through the hallway. "Daniel!" Daniel raised his injured arm to shield her instinctively. The resin struck him full force. He fell backward. Slamming onto the floor, Saren crawled toward him, her voice breaking. Daniel, stay awake. His breathing was shallow. The resin had wrapped itself around his arm and shoulder, like a living armor of poison. Our Ayn felt tears gather in her eyes. Her people had never cried for someone else, but she was crying now because the human who refused to run might not survive the next few minutes. Daniel struggled to breathe as the resin tightened across his shoulder. The dark blue mass pulsed like a living heart, glowing brighter with every second. Saren knelt beside him, trembling so badly she could barely hold his face. Daniel! Please, stay awake, she whispered, his lips curved in a faint smile, even through pain. I'm still here. Saren tried to pull the resin off, but it burned her fingers instantly. She cried out and jerked her hand back. It's too strong, she whispered. It wants your body now. Daniel coughed weakly. No, it wants. It linked to your nerves first, and now it's using my energy too. It's acting like a bridge, a living circuit. Saren froze. She felt the connection between them. The resin pulsed in the same rhythm on both their arms. It had synchronized them. Their pain, heartbeat, and fear were tangled together. Saren whispered, It sees us as one system now. And if one of us dies, Daniel whispered, the other follows. A cold silence filled the locked hallway. Saren felt a shaking breath escape her lips. She had always been taught that humans were chaotic and dangerous. But no one told her they were capable of something like this. No one told her that humans would risk everything for someone else. She placed her forehead against Daniel's, her voice cracking. I don't want you to die because of me. Daniel smiled gently. I'm not planning to. Another explosion rattled the hallway. Sparks fell from the ceiling. The resin feeding on the energy conduits grew even larger, forming a web-like structure around them. It was evolving into something new, something far more dangerous. Saren held Daniel's hand tightly. What do we do? Daniel's eyes focused, sharp even through weakness. We change the rhythm. Saren blinked. What? The resin is syncing with our heartbeats, Daniel said. If we disrupt the pattern, just for a moment, it might break the connection long enough to force it off. Saren frowned in confusion. I don't understand. He squeezed her hand. We sync our heartbeats on purpose, together, and then we change the pattern suddenly. A shock, a jump in frequency. The resin might panic and release the nerves. Saren's eyes widened. That is extremely dangerous. Daniel laughed softly. Yeah, that's the human part of the plan. Saren's heart raced. This plan required something intimate, something sacred in her culture. Heartbeat sharing. Her people only allowed such closeness with family or soul-bonded partners. But now, a human was asking her to trust him with her life. Daniel's voice softened. Saren, I need your permission. Saren held his gaze. Her eyes shimmered, terrified yet full of something deeper. Something new. You have it, she whispered. You had it from the beginning. Daniel exhaled shakily, relieved. He activated a small device on his wrist, a medical synchronizer he rarely used. He placed it over Saren's chest where her pulse was strongest. Then he positioned another patch against his own heart. The device beeped. Saren felt a vibration run through her ribs. Daniel's pulse merged with hers slowly at first, then perfectly. Two different species, two different bodies. One shared heartbeat. Saren felt her entire body warm. Daniel whispered, when I say now, change your breathing and tense your arm. Together? Together. The resin began to vibrate. It sensed the shift. The glow pulsed faster. It was becoming confused by the merged human-alien rhythm. A spark lit in Daniel's eyes. It's working. The base AI spoke again, voice cold and mechanical. Lockdown complete. Sector oxygen will reduce in 4 minutes. Saren's panic rose. Daniel, we are running out of time. I know, he whispered. Ready? Saren nodded, though her heart shook. Daniel squeezed her hand. 3, 2, 1 now. Saren gasped, tensing her muscles at the exact moment Daniel changed his breathing. Their synchronized hearts suddenly shifted rhythm sharp. Abrupt, like a lightning strike inside their bodies, the resin convulsed violently. It shrieked in a horrible sound that echoed across the entire hallway. Saren screamed. Daniel did too. The resin writhed like something dying. Then, pieces of it began to crack. The linked tendrils on Saren's arm split open, releasing bright sparks. The section on Daniel's shoulder tore apart like shredded cloth. It's breaking. Saren cried. Daniel gritted his teeth. Keep going. Stay with me. They forced their heartbeat pattern again, harder this time. More intense, more unified. The resin thrashed wildly, losing control. Tendrils snapped. Energy bled out in bursts. The resin screeched again, and then a sudden silence. A strange, terrifying calm. The resin collapsed into small fragments across the floor. Saren gasped. Daniel, we did. Before she could finish, the resin pieces began vibrating again. Daniel's eyes widened. Oh no! The fragments rose into the air. Not dead. Not defeated. Evolving. Again, a swarm of tiny organisms formed a cloud of living particles, floating like blue fireflies. Saren froze. Daniel, what is it doing? Daniel's face turned pale as he whispered, It's preparing to multiply. The fragments of resin floated in the air like glowing blue dust, swirling slowly, rising higher and higher. Each tiny piece pulsed like a miniature heartbeat. Saren watched them with wide, terrified eyes. They're alive, she whispered. Daniel pushed himself up with shaking arms. His breath was rough, pain tight in his voice. They're not just alive, he said. They're forming a swarm, a new organism. As if responding to his words, the floating particles shifted direction and began circling around Daniel and Saren like a storm of light. The air hummed, vibrating through the walls. Saren forced herself closer to Daniel. Why is it circling us? Daniel swallowed hard. Because we're still sensed. It sees us as one target. Saren's heart dropped. Then it will attack both of us. Daniel's eyes hardened with a familiar human fire. Not if I attack first. Saren stared at him in shock. You cannot fight a cloud, Daniel. It will enter your lungs, your eyes, your blood. Daniel gave a weak smile. Then I won't let it reach you. Before she could respond, he pushed himself between Saren and the forming swarm, raising his damaged arm like a shield. Saren felt panic rush through her chest. No, Daniel, stop. But he didn't stop. Humans rarely did. The blue swarm suddenly dove downward, fast, aggressive, like a wave of living needles. Daniel grabbed a metal panel from the floor and swung it through the air. Sparks scattered. A shockwave rippled through the cloud, pushing it back for a moment. It wasn't enough. The swarm corrected itself and lunged again. Saren reached out, desperate. Daniel, you will die if it enters your body. Daniel coughed, gripping the metal panel tighter. And you'll die if I don't stop it. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a weight stronger than fear. A tremor shook Daniel's knees. Blood ran down his burned arm. His body was at its limit. Saren could see it clearly. But even now, even with death seconds away, he refused to give up. Saren felt something painful twist inside her. Why was he doing this? Why would a human risk everything? Why would he stand alone against something their species had never even seen before? Tears filled her eyes, her voice trembled. Daniel, please. Let me help you. Daniel shook his head. You're weakened. Your nerves are still recovering. I won't let it touch you again. The swarm surged downward. Daniel swung the panel. Again and again, sparks flying everywhere. Each movement made the swarm retreat for a second. But each time it returned stronger, faster, learning his pattern. Saren watched helplessly. Every swing drained him. Every breath hurt him. Every second felt like his last. A soft sob escaped her lips. "Daniel, why do you fight like this? Why do humans do this?" Daniel gasped, bracing for the next attack. "Because..." He struggled. "To breathe. We don't quit. Not when someone needs us." The swarm dove again, this time splitting into 3 separate waves. Daniel blocked the first, avoided the second. But the third wave struck his chest. He shouted as the particles burned into his clothing, melting through fabric and searing the skin beneath. His back slammed against the wall. The metal panel fell from his hand. Saren screamed, "Daniel!" The swarm gathered again, preparing for a final strike. Saren's hands shook violently. She had to do something. She couldn't watch a human die. For her, not like this. She crawled to Daniel's side. He was breathing hard, barely able to lift his head. "Saren." "Stay back," he whispered. "Please." She shook her head, tears falling onto his chest. "No, not anymore. You fought for me. I will fight for you now." Daniel tried to respond, but the words never came. The swarm began to glow brighter, charging energy, preparing to pierce both of them. Saren's eyes hardened with a new emotion. A will to protect, something she never felt before meeting him. She grabbed Daniel's pulse disruptor, the same device that had hurt the resin earlier. Her hands shook, but her grip tightened. Daniel forced his eyes open. His voice was barely a breath. "Saren, don't." She shook her head. "Humans don't quit," she whispered back. "And maybe I don't either." The swarm shot downward like a lightning bolt. Saren activated the disruptor at full power and pointed it upward. A blinding, violent shockwave exploded into the air. The entire hallway lit up in electric blue. The swarm screamed, a sound of thousands of tiny creatures vibrating in pain. They scattered in all directions, crashing into walls, the ceiling, the floor. Daniel shielded Saren with his body as fragments of resin rained down like burning snow. Silence followed. Heavy, dangerous, uncertain. Saren collapsed to her knees beside Daniel, breathing fast. His voice was weak but alive. You saved us." Saren shook her head, touching his injured arm with trembling hands. "No, you saved me first." Daniel gave a tired laugh. "That's what humans do." Saren felt warmth spread in her chest, not from the battle, but from him. But before she could speak, the resin fragments on the floor began to vibrate again. Tiny sparks flickered. Each broken piece slowly rose from the ground. Daniel whispered, fear chilling his voice, "Saren, it's not done." For a moment, there was only silence. Then the resin fragments began to glow, soft at first, then brighter, until the entire hallway was filled with shimmering blue light. The tiny pieces lifted from the ground like dust rising in slow motion. Saren felt her heart drop. No, it's still alive. Daniel struggled to push himself onto his elbows, pain carved deep into his voice. "It's rebuilding." The fragments spun together, forming a swirling storm in the center of the hallway. But something was different now. They weren't forming a creature. They weren't forming tendrils. They weren't attacking. They were hesitating. Saren noticed it first. "They are confused." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" She pointed with a trembling hand. "They are not choosing a target. They are scanning you, studying us." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "They shouldn't be reacting like this, unless the disruptor changed them." Saren's heartbeat quickened. "What if we changed more than the rhythm?" The swarm flickered weakly. The glow dimmed. The particles wobbled like they were losing energy. Something inside them was breaking, fading, collapsing. And then a sharp beep echoed through the hallway. Daniel looked down at the pulse disruptor in Saren's hand. The device displayed a blinking warning. Energy feedback loop detected neural. Signature TRN's FERI's. Daniel froze. Oh no, Saren. I think I know what happened. Saren swallowed hard. What happened? Daniel looked at her gently, with fear, yes, but also with a strange kind of awe. You didn't just attack the swarm, he whispered. You gave it a new signal. A new instinct. Your heartbeat and mine. Together. Saren's eyes widened. The resin is trying to copy us? Daniel nodded weakly. It doesn't understand attack or defense anymore. It's trying to understand the signal of cooperation. The swarm flickered again, weaker now, its glow fading fast like a dying star. Saren whispered. Then, they are not dangerous. Anymore? Daniel tried to stand, but his body failed. Saren quickly caught him, supporting his weight. He leaned against her, breathing hard. He whispered, They're not attacking because they imprinted on us. They learned mercy. Saren felt something tighten in her chest, a deep, overwhelming emotion she didn't yet understand. Her voice shook. Because they sensed how you fought, to protect me. Daniel gave a soft smile. And how you fought to protect me. The swarm dimmed again, flickered, then slowly began to drift. Downward, Saren watched as the particles fell gently to the floor like tiny blue snowflakes. They pulsed once, twice, and then they went still, every piece, every spark, every fragment. Dead. The resin had stopped without killing anyone. The emergency doors slid open as base security and scientists rushed in. Weapons raised, scanners flashing. They froze when they saw Daniel and Saren alive, leaning on each other for support. One alien soldier whispered, shocked, the resin, it stopped. But how? Saren lifted her chin, the first time she had ever spoken with true pride in her voice. Because a human refused to abandon me. Murmurs spread across the room. Another alien scientist stepped forward, confused. Humans cannot survive resin contact. It kills everything it touches. Daniel chuckled weakly. Guess someone forgot to tell the resin. Saren tightened her grip around him, her voice trembling with emotion. No, the resin saw something stronger than itself. It saw human courage. And changed. Daniel leaned slightly against her, too exhausted to stand on his own. Well, he whispered, that's a first. Minutes later, medical teams arrived. They lifted Daniel onto a stretcher, carefully checking his burns and injuries. Saren refused to leave his side, her hand gripping his tightly. A medic said, We need space, Miss Vora. He's hurt badly. Saren's voice was firm for the first time. I am not leaving him. Daniel opened one eye, smiling softly. Told you. Humans don't quit. Saren shook her head as a tear slipped down her cheek. No, Daniel Hayes, you don't quit. He reached toward her weakly, brushing a thumb against her knuckles. And neither did you. Their hands stayed connected even as the stretcher moved. Down the corridor. For the first time in her life, Saren felt something she never thought possible. Not fear, not loneliness, not duty. But connection. A bond forged through fire, danger, and courage. A bond between two lives that should have never crossed. A bond the resin itself learned from. Daniel whispered, barely audible. You're safe, Saren. That's all that matters. Saren leaned close, her voice soft but steady. And you live, Daniel. That is what matters to me. The stretcher passed through the medical wing doors, leaving behind the destroyed hallway, the dead resin fragments, and the soldiers who had witnessed a miracle. A miracle that changed everything they believed about humans. A miracle that began with one truth. Humans don't give up. Not on themselves. Not on others. Not even on someone they barely know. And for the first time in her life, Saren whispered a human word she had never used before, but now understood deeply. Hero.